Topcoder's Chief Technology Officer, Dave Messenger.
Okay, well, thank you for that warm introduction, Michelle. A little nerve-wracking going after John Windsor here, but excited to get going. You know, the best way to start a presentation is start with the most depressing stuff first. So we figure we get that out of the way. Did anyone have the chance to go to a Gartner Symposium about 2 weeks ago in Orlando, Florida? One of my favorite authors was a keynote by Malcolm Gladwell. And he gave a talk called Fast Tech, Slow People. And he said there's an economist rule where disruptive innovation technology takes, at the fastest moments of time, 20 years for mass adoption. So if you've been in this industry for almost 20 years, like myself, I'm sure John will like to hear this, we're almost there. Another year or two, we'll be at 20 years, mass adoption, great success, we'll all be excited. But the examples that Malcolm had, one that I really liked was the telephone. So if you look at the telephone, it was invented in 1860. 1872 was the first time they actually connected phone calls. The first transfer occurred. It was rolled out in 1900. Didn't actually get mass adoption until 1926. You know, so if you think about that, almost 45 years, 46 years before it occurred. You know, Malcolm gives a couple different rules of why that happened. The one that kind of jumped out to me was a strategic home. So it was controlled by the telegraph people. The telegraph people said, anytime a phone call takes longer than like 10 words, that's a waste of using a telephone. It should be like a telegraph, short, sweet, get it over with. You know, if you think now, like as you start thinking about innovation, technology, the gig economy, you know, maybe it needs strategic homes of where people in this room that are innovators, that are thinkers. How do you fit this in your organization outside of the traditional hierarchies? How do you get that into your organization? Who can drive that? So, continuing my depression thoughts here. Everyone here familiar with the Standish Group and their chaos report? So, they have a famous report. Thanks to Michael Cote, he put this slide together. He looked at the last 20 years. So again, roughly 20 years here of failure. So in that report, if you see the green here, that is successful software projects that are delivered. So roughly never more than 30% of the time is a software project delivered on time successfully. The yellow is what they call challenging, which means over budget, over time, or not enough functionality, usually 2 out of the 3. In red, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Red was the failed projects, yellow is the challenge, and in green is the successful project. So very small amount. So as I said, Michael Cote from Pivotal, he was the one that took the graphics, so thanks to him for sharing that information. And he actually did some of these graphics based on a book from Mark Schwartz, who's now an AWS strategist for AWS, but he's been CIO in the US government, been a CIO in a couple different spots, wrote a most recent book, it's War, Peace, and IT. And what was interesting in that book is he says, what if we're thinking about software wrong, and we shouldn't actually look at the successes, but look at the failures, and how do you learn and move forward from the failures? So Michael Cote took that same graphic and he flipped it around and said, maybe we should look at the successes. So the successes here are in red. It means you just got lucky, but you should plan for the failures. In other words, software's true nature is it's going to be over time, over budget. Maybe our estimations just don't work. So how do you think about, be able to react, move fast? I mean, that's what I think Agile and other pieces are trying to do. So if you look here, you know, they still say ITIL. I know it's typically not your most common app dev process, but it's still an app dev process. I mean, look at all the boxes on this page. Here's one now. This is the latest SAFe, I think it's 2.0 implementation for scaled Agile. Even that, I mean, look at all the boxes, lines, circles. I mean, I don't know how you're going to be successful when you have all that process to do things. So what I want to talk about now is, you know, what do I see the future of how you do software development, especially when you combine it with a passion community. I think the big thing to me is add an AI to it. I know a lot of people think it's doom and gloom with AI and the coming of the Terminator, but I think as you look at it, like if you start taking testing, I'll just go through testing a little bit. and you start looking at what we can do with the platform, with AI, things of that nature, is very easily you can start pulling in different tools, right? Maybe you're looking at quality scores. What are the possibility of errors occurring in that? What are the number of branches that go down? Look at your builds, integrate that with test development, security. It's going to be much easier for you to identify problems earlier and often when you start putting more AI into how you do the work. This is another famous slide, maybe not as famous as the mythical Man Month, but if you've heard of the Casper Jones, 1996, he had a testing slide where he looked at the cost and the effort to fix bugs. So imagine now, 85% of your bugs are done during your coding phase, but they don't get identified till later on. The later you find those bugs, the more issues, the more problems you have. So, the current trend here, and again, it's been around since 1996, I'm not sure how many organizations are able to do it, is how do you shift left your testing, your feedback? Now I think when you start adding in AI, where you're constantly looking at your metrics on how your code is doing, who you should be assigning that work to. You can bring in the passion economy and bring in people. What if you were able to, say, go to like a Topcoder and bring in testers immediately? We have a client now where we're bringing in hundreds of testers for a 24-hour period, once a week, to shorten their development life cycles. You can see what it only does, not only to the quality, but the cost of doing that. And imagine when you start thinking about that across all aspects of your business. What if you could bring in, we have a speaker later today from Mesh 01. What if you could bring in passionate members to give you feedback immediately, very early on, so you're not all the way down the stream before you find out that one of your products doesn't work well, or the customer doesn't like it, the end customer. So you could imagine being able to tap into people quickly and easily, what that could do to this. And I think that's the main reason why this has not been adopted for 20 plus years, is because it's been hard to scale, find the resources, and tap into that talent. So what do you do when you add passion into this? So one of the things I look at, again, passion economy, if you look at podcasting, Software Engineering Daily is one of my favorite podcasts. Michael Cote, who was earlier, has got a really popular podcast. We have an oil and gas podcaster here. It's amazing what a passionate person can do. The Software Engineering Daily has about, I think it's almost 500,000 developers that listen to it. He does a daily podcast on how to improve your software engineering. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, we had one of the engineering leads from Facebook on. One of the things I thought was really interesting for Facebook was very early on, they don't assign people to a project. They actually have people go and self-select on what project they want to work on. So if you're a developer and you're passionate about providing the best dev tools, you'll go work in the dev tools group, empowering other Facebook developers, external developers, on how to do that. If you're passionate about the video, maybe you go work on Facebook's video team. I don't know how they actually staff projects that no one wants to work on. That's always tends to be my problem, but they are really, I just thought it was very interesting when he went through how they really staff their projects, and that was what they said was their secret sauce. If you think about Facebook when it first launched, I don't think anyone realized what the platform was going to be. And they were competing for the top talent against Google, all the other companies. And they said the number one reason they got people to sign up and become engineers at Facebook and get top talent was they got the passionate people. They went and got the PhDs from Stanford and said, come work on graph theory, figuring out this friend thing. They got the top people in scaling infrastructure, figuring out how to do PHP. It wasn't the toughest technology programs. No one, except I think our live broadcaster, likes to work on PHP today. But they were able to still attract top talent to come to Facebook and work on top technologies. And that's what we're trying to do at Topcoder. You can see here's a profile for one of our recent members here. You can see that not only is he working, he's doing great. The quote I like there too was, why he participates in Topcoder is for the love of code. Find a job you enjoy doing and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Now I don't know, that might not actually be his quote, or he may be quoting someone else there, but just the fact that he chose that for his personal quote is, I think indicative of what the Topcoder community is. He's here working daily across all these different clients, doing the projects that he loves, that he's passionate about, and you can bring that into your company. So, to me, when I'm getting back again to software development life cycles, methodologies, this is one of the British design 2-diamond, which I thought was an interesting one, actually one I wasn't too familiar with until a colleague of mine, Andy Lamora, pointed it out to me. What I like about this is I think it shows how even an individual can come in and say, to figure something out, then can go wide, understand the problem, come back. I like that idea of being able to tap into a group of people, spread out, get as much information as possible, bring it back in. So if you think about the people here in this room and what's happening and where I think this is going, imagine if you want to start a project and you say, hey, I have an idea, here are the things I want to do. I can go out, get 10 prototypes from Topcoder. Maybe you can then go out to BTG and say, I need market strategy, market validation, be able to tap into McKinsey-level talent and get that strategy done for you, probably in a fraction of the time. I think typically the big consultant is probably 6 months, hundreds of thousands of dollars, versus being able to tap into on-demand talent. You can even think of then, so once you have it figured out and you start building your prototypes, you could go, like I mentioned before, like a Mesh 01. Be able to tap into your end clients. Your end clients can go out and actually give you feedback, use your product, tap into those passionate people that are going to love your product and give you feedback before you go out to the mass adoption. Get that in the hands of your end clients. And even, we're doing a lot of work with Verblio now. If you were like me, at the end of a project, we never did any documentation. User documentation might happen 3 weeks after it goes live. People can figure it out. Imagine being able to tap into on-demand content writers. So you can get your documentation done early, get your presentations done, get blog posts, announcements, press releases, you name it. You can tap into people almost immediately without really any friction. So you could take one person, can immediately get things done. That was a video of a source control where we can quickly pull people in and out of a project immediately. So that was actually a graphical representation of one of our projects. But what's neat about that is you'll see developers coming in, the code gets all done and deployed. Immediately, you get a bunch of QA people that come in and swarm. We can bring in hundreds of people that come in and test. But it just shows you how quickly you can get resources to tap into your project. And this is what Malcolm Gladwell said was the secret to break out of that 20-year innovation, how you move faster. His point was that you really need to use your imagination. So I know everyone in this room are innovators. So I think if you could imagine, right, like with the VCR, you imagine that, hey, if we do the serialized TV, it's going to increase our viewership. It's going to drive a whole new segment in business for Hollywood. So it wasn't just the same old on the VCR. It was reimagining how to do TV. And I think the other piece I liked about that was it was really a couple people that really pushed that. So to me, when you think about the passion economy, the platforms that are out there that you'll hear from today, Topcoder, Verblio, BTG, Mesh 01, a bunch of other ones out there, that's what I think is very interesting, is the individual can now contribute and drive innovation at their companies with given the right tools. So if you're imaginative, you can actually go out, find the resources. You're not resourced anymore. All you're really constrained by is your imagination and desire to get things done. So thanks a lot.